Hey, Allister from City Rock, obviously. I'm in the gear shop, and this is the pro tip of the week: how to coil your rope and uncoil your rope, and how to store it nicely in a rope bag so that when you open it up the next time you want to use it, it's ready to go and you don't have to run through the whole rope and untangle it before you want to use it. So, buckle up your seatbelts, folks. It's going to be real. Okay, so I'm ready to coil my rope. I've made a neat pile on the floor with it already so that it's well flaked, so that as I'm coiling I don't have to stop every now and then to untangle it. I just ran through and made a pile with one end at the bottom, the pile, and then one end at the top. So this is now going to be the end of my coil, and I coil from one end to the other because when you're uncoiling it, you don't want to have two ends together and the middle on the other side. You want one end on the bottom and one end on the top of your coil. So start by just making a nice scarf around your neck. And how the process works is you just hold on to the end that's not moving and make a little loop so your fingers can slide through the end that is moving, and you just make more scarves. And you just keep going with these scarves. If you can keep them a similar length, that's quite nice. You just make more and more of them until you get to the end. So let me do that real quick for you. One of the great things about this method is that I'm not picking up the whole coil every time. You know, my hands are free. I'm only moving the strand that's been added to the coil at one time. So it saves a bit of energy. You're not butterflying, picking up the whole coil every time. If you want a good shoulder workout, keep all of these in your hands, and every time you add a new coil, lift them up. But if you just want to be quick and efficient and not stress too much, this is the better way to do it. So now I'm close to the end and I want to tie my coil off. Depending on what I'm doing, I'm going to show you two methods. So one method is for when I'm just going sport climbing and my rope is in the bag, and I'm just going to carry the rope in the bag and only uncoil it when I get to the crag. And the other method is for when I want someone else to carry the rope, or if I'm carrying the rope without a backpack and I want to tie the rope into a backpack itself so that I can carry just the rope and tie it around me using the rope. So the first method, just going to the gym or going to the crag, whatever, the rope's in the bag, you only need one end to be free, and we're only going to use one of the ends to tie up our coil. So make sure your end isn't too long. I'm going to undo a little bit just to give me enough rope to work with. And the first thing you want to do is just grab the whole coil, lift it over your head, and be holding the coil where your neck was, so that you have two sides. You don't want to bring these two and be using these guys. You want to keep the coil here where your neck is. So I'm just going to undo one loop over here, and what you're going to do is, keeping a good grip, it helps if you have big hands, but if you don't, it'll be alright. Just wrap the rest of the rope around your coil. And a good thing to know is that the first wrap that you do is the lowest wrap, and as you add a new wrap, each wrap goes higher and higher and higher up the coil. So my first one's underneath, and I'm just going to pull it nice and tight. If you've got a lot of practice like me, you can just slide the rope around and use your elbow to trap it against your body so it doesn't undo itself every time. And while I'm making these wraps around, I'm making it quite tight because that's what's holding my whole coil together for however long it needs to be together till I want to uncoil it. So if your wraps are quite loose, your coil will start to disintegrate, and then you'll pick up your rope and it'll just come apart in your hand, and that's not very good. Once I've done a few, I've got 6 or 7 here. That's enough to hold my whole coil together. I'm going to take a bite of rope, which is just a loop of rope, and I'm going to pass it through over here where my fingers are. So now I have a loop with the end on the other side, and I just pass the end through the loop that I passed through the coil. And what's great about this method is that it cinches tight over the top of the coil and holds it in place. and I work this quite tight, use my muscles a bit, and then this end just goes wrapped around itself so that it's nice and tight. And that's a really nice neat coil. You can put that in a bag and scrunch it up, shake it around a bit, it's not going anywhere. So to uncoil your coil, once you've undone however it is that you tied it up, you should have one end which is the top, and on the other side one end which is the bottom, and just keeping the whole coil in your hand. You're just going to slowly go one coil at a time. If you want to, you can throw the whole thing on the ground and then untangle it from there, but I find it's easier to just undo one strand as you go, and as you flake it out, it pulls itself tight. You catch the next one, it goes nice and easy, and then you make a nice coil, a nice flaked pile, I guess, on the ground. And because you're just adding to the top of the pile on the ground as you go, when you're ready to climb, the rope will feed out really nicely from the top through to the bottom. So that's one of the reasons why earlier I said I only coil from one end to the other, so that I can uncoil it really easily like this. If you dump it on the ground and make a big pile, it's probably going to get tangled. You're going to sit and struggle with it. Once you've finished your coil and you want to do the backpack coil, you start off the same. Take it off your shoulder or off your neck. And now we're just going to undo both sides to give us enough to work with. And I just want my two ends to be pretty similar in length. This is how long they are now. Not the end of the world if they're a little bit out. And instead of just doing one wrap, one strand around, I'm going to use both of the strands that are coming out of my coil. And wrap them around nice and neat. It takes a little bit of fiddling because now you have two strands. You just want to make sure that both of those strands are neat and tight. And once you've got enough wraps around to hold your coil together, similar to the previous method, you take just a bight of rope, which is just a loop, in through the top. And now when you pull it tight, you should have a decent length of rope on each of those strands. So here I've got about a meter and a little bit, and now the magic. You separate those two strands into shoulder straps. The rope goes over your shoulders, sits on your back. Take them underneath your arms and cross it behind you. And then bring those strands in front and tie them up. Can use a reef knot, it's quite good. Can do any knot really, as long as it's not coming undone. And I do just a few, and I like to make sure that my ends aren't too loose. And there you go, a backpack. You can scramble a section or hike far with it, or if you have friends that are coming, you can make your friend carry the rope if they don't have a bag. So that's quite a useful thing. And to undo it is exactly the same as the other one. You just untie, take off over the top of your head, undo the ends, get to here where you have one strand on this side to the end and the other end is on this side, and as I go I'm just going to pull off a strand at a time till I have a neat pile on the ground. So my rope is in a neat pile on my rope mat. I've got the end, the bottom end over here, tied into the red end with a figure of 8, and I use a figure of 8 for the bottom of my rope. And then on the top of my rope, which goes to the top of my coil, I have an overhand knot onto the green end. So if your rope mat doesn't have colors, you can just use the different knot to identify the top and the bottom. But if you do have colors, you can do the same knot, green for the top, red for the bottom, and it's good to tie your rope onto your mat so that you always have a knot in the end of your rope. A lot of accidents of people getting load off the end of the rope, and if they just tied it to the mat, would have been good. So I've got a neat pile, and I've just took a bit of time to make a really neat wall flake pile onto the mat. And now what I'm going to do is bundle it up really tightly in my mat and then add it into my bag, so that when I undo it, because it's so tightly bundled, I end up with essentially my pile the same as it is now. You just fold it up like you're making an envelope. And folding it up gets it into the similar dimensions of your bag. And then once you folded it up really nicely, you just roll up along the coil until your bundle fits into your bag. And this bag from Black Diamond is great because it's got some space to put your harness and your shoes and some quick draws, a water bottle. But if your rope bag is a little smaller, your bundle should be the size of your bag, and then you'll cinch the bag down around your bundle. And then to undo it, undo the zip, open it up, open your bag out, and then you just unroll it and you unfold your mat, grab the top end, which is at the top of the coil, and it'll just feed out nice and neat.